All right, I want to finish. That clock is off, by the way. That clock is way off. I think it's dead. Maybe even take it off the wall. There's nothing. The only thing worse than no clock is a wrong clock. Thank you very much. Anything worse than no clock is a wrong clock. Somebody once said, even a broken clock is right twice a day. Yeah, I don't know what the context was for that, but even a broken clock is right twice a day. I don't know what the exact, there's some Musar lesson, I don't know what it is, but there is a Musar lesson. Okay, I want to go through in Parsha Vayeschanan now. So, first of all, there are a couple of fundamentals here. And we're going to get to what's called the Aseres Hadibros, what they call the 10 Commandments, okay? And so if you take a look at page 962. No, past that, way past that. Okay. Page 968, sorry. Vayikra Moshe el Kol Yisrael. So he calls over, Moshe says to Jew, V'yomer lehem, Shema Yisrael sachukim v'samishpatim sh'anochi dover b'zdechem hayom, top of the page. V'lamadetem osam u'shmartem la'asosam. You should learn them and you shall fulfill them. That means the only way to fulfill the mitzvahs is by learning the mitzvahs. And that's why the Gemara says there was a debate in the yeshiva, what's more important, studying Torah or action? So one of the Chachamim said, well, obviously action, right? What are we learning for? We're learning so we can put it into action, right? And Rabbi Akiva said, Torah study is more because it leads to action. How's that for a paradoxical statement? Study is more important because study leads to action. So that means that without studying, we'd be nowhere. And this is one of the mistakes that people don't understand, is there are two reasons we study Torah. There are two reasons. This is possibly the most difficult concept for people outside of the Torah world to understand. Of all the concepts that we have, of all the mitzvahs, all the funny things we do, this is possibly the most difficult concept. You see, in the world at large, you study because you're trying to get somewhere. You study engineering because you want to know how to build bridges, and you study medicine because you want to know how to hopefully cure people, right? And you study You study biology, or you study chemistry, or you study sports because you want to be an announcer, right? Or you want to be a sports researcher. But you're doing it for a purpose. In Torah, we study Torah because we have to know the laws, but we study Torah because the study itself is inherently valuable. Nobody would say that to read a biology book is inherently valuable. It's inherently a mitzvah to read a biology book, and certainly nobody would say to read Shakespeare is inherently valuable, right? It's valuable for those who sell the books, but it's not valuable for the people reading. Whereas studying Torah itself is a mitzvah. So if let's say, for example, I'm learning Torah, I'm going to learn the laws of, let's say, lulav and esrog, because I got to know how to shake a lulav and esrog, right? So why am I learning the law? Because I want to do a mitzvah. So if I'm doing a mitzvah, what's the difference what mitzvah I do? If there's a mitzvah to shake a lulav and esrog, there's also a mitzvah to learn. We just did a mitzvah by reading this word of Torah. So when you learn Torah, you're doing a mitzvah. Just learning Torah, you're doing a mitzvah because it is inherently a mitzvah. You don't find that anywhere else. Reading a chemistry book, or reading a history book. There's no mitzvah in reading the book itself. Once I know the history, I know it well enough to get a good grade on the test. So then I don't need to read the book anymore. There are many rabbis who have been asked by their congregants, pulpit rabbis who have been found some time to study Torah. They learn Gemara. One of the congregants will say to the rabbi, hey, I thought you got smicha already. Why are you still studying? Right? You understand? They don't understand the concept of study for study's sake. So the first thing we have to know is we have to learn it, because if we don't learn it, we're not going to do it. That's for sure. But we also have to know we have to learn it because we just have to learn. That's what you do. What you do is you study Torah. And study Torah has an effect on us. Okay, that we've spoken about enough. I have a friend who's a doctor, by the way. He's constantly polishing up on his, he's constantly staying up to date on the recent medicine. As a doctor, he's constantly reading up on there are constantly new discoveries and constantly new, as a doctor, you got to stay up on it. And then, if whatever field I'm imagining in engineering, there are also different ways. They're finding better ways and more efficient ways to build bridges. Or maybe not in India, but in other places, in the world, they're probably finding better ways to build bridges. That sort of thing. So I'm sure they're probably what do you call it? Okay. So then he says like this. Fourth line from the top. Lo esavosenu kuras Hashem es abrisazos. Hashem did not make this covenant with our forefathers. Ki itanu anachnu ele po hayom kulonu chayim. All of us here today, Hashem made this covenant with us. Now this is a very strange concept. Moshe Rabbeinu is talking to the people at the 40th year. The entire generation that was at Sinai has died out. So how could he say to the people that those who are with us today, Hashem made the covenant? How could he say that to them? Anachnu ele po hayom kulonu chayim. How could Moshe Rabbeinu say, we who are alive today, Hashem made the covenant with the people of the desert have already died out. This is the 40th year. And they were the people of the first year was where Har Sinai was given. So at least most of them had died out, and a lot of these people weren't born yet. So how could Moshe Rabbeinu make a statement like that? Good question, isn't it, John? Good question. What do you say?
Because he made the covenant with the people henceforth from then on. So it goes on through the generations down the line as well.
Henceforth. Oh, we're back to Shakespeare, huh? Okay. he made, good. There is a concept, there's a concept like that. Okay, so we've got three different answers here. Answer number one, the most basic answer is that when Moshe Rabbeinu said, we who are here today alive, he was talking about we who were at Har Sinai alive. Okay. The standard answer that you're going to hear is that all of our neshamas were at Har Sinai. And they were. The neshamas were Har Sinai. Even if we weren't there, our neshamas were there, and who knows, we may be a reincarnation for if you want to get into Gilgulim and you want to get into reincarnation, but we are, at some point, way or other, our neshamas were at Har Sinai, whatever that means. Even more, there's a famous question people ask, the rule is if you're born Jewish, you're Jewish. And if you convert to Judaism, you're Jewish. And if somebody converts to Judaism and they go down in that mikveh and they come up, right? If you change your mind, don't come up, right? If you change your mind, if you go into the mikveh and you change your mind, you don't want to be Jewish, you better stay down. Because once you come up, you're Jewish. And you could never get out of it. There's no converting back. Right? So if you go, I don't know, it could be that even once you're in there, you're Jewish already. I don't know exactly at what point it happens. But once you come out of that mikveh, you're Jewish. You're as Jewish as Avram Avinu. And you're as Jewish. And if you're born Jewish, you're Jewish. There's no way to get out of it. Now, many people have asked an interesting question. Why am I bound by something that these people made 2,000 years ago? See, people made an agreement 2,000 years ago, so I got to be bound by it? I never agreed to this. And don't tell me about my neshama being at Har Sinai. I'll worry about my neshama. You don't know anything about my neshama. And my neshama, I say, I don't know about my neshama. I wasn't bound. I never made that agreement. I never agreed to put on tefillin every day, and I never agreed not to eat shellfish. So what do you tell them? How can me a Chinik? Why am I bound by this? And the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says you're born against your will. And you're born Jewish, you're born against your will, you live against your will, and you die against your will. Right? So I didn't ask for this. So it's like some people say, well, it's like when you're playing cards, deal me out. I'm not in on this hand. Right? I don't want any of the reward. I don't want any of the punishment. I'm out. Right? There's no such thing as out in Judaism. There's no out. You're in. You either get reward or you get punished. There's no out. Why am I bound by it? You never thought about that question? Why am I bound by something they made? The most basic answer is because Hashem said so. That's why. Okay, but let's try to understand it in our contemporary terms. If America has some sort of signed agreement, if the president in one administration, if one administration, America, made a signed agreement with another country, the next administration can't come along and say, hey, we never agreed to that. That wasn't our administration. Maybe you want to break the agreement, but you're bound by it. International law, you're bound by that. Nobody has a problem with that. There was what do you call it? You signed a treaty with another country. Okay, treaties are broken. That's when wars start. Wars start with broken treaties, but in a civilized, in theoretically the Western world, you're bound by the treaty. But you didn't make the treaty. Your treaty was made by your ancestors, made by 3 administrations ago. We're still bound by that treaty. Isn't that true? Right? There's a treaty. All sorts of treaties have been made. So the Torah is telling you, just from our Torah, just from a human perspective, it makes sense. A treaty was made. A pact was made. Once a pact was made, we're bound by that pact that was made by our ancestors. That's even from a Western mind could understand that. And for a Torah Jew is because Hashem said that you're bound by it. I've given it to you, and your neshamas were there. Okay. Now, let's go to the Aseres Hadibros, okay? So it starts on Pasuk Vav. Now, I don't want to go through all the psukim, I just want to go through the concepts a little bit. First of all, do you know that there's a medrash that says that it starts with, right in the middle of the page, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am Hashem, your God, who took you out of Egypt. There is a medrash that says that Hashem said, Shema Yisrael, I am Hashem, your God, who took you out of Egypt, and the Jewish people said, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. So that's where Shema Yisrael comes from. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Shema Yisrael, listen, Jewish people, I took you out of Egypt, I am your God. And then the Jewish people said, what he called Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. So the first of the 10 commandments is you got to believe in Hashem, and the second one is you're not allowed to make any idols or believe anything else could be possibly exist. Those are the basic fundamentals of Judaism. We're not even allowed to entertain the possibility that something outside of HaKadosh Baruch Hu could exist. This is a what do you call it? In the idea of not worshiping idols, and not acknowledging was a question that was asked in the Holocaust, because there was a possibility, excuse me one second, there was a possibility of, there were Jews at a certain point, they could get some sort of baptismal certificate. And if you were holding this baptismal certificate, then you could what do you call it? You could save your life. And then, how would you like to be a rabbi who has to ask Paskin that shaila? When a Jew says to you, can I get a baptismal certificate? I told you thought it's always about, I forgot Yalla V'Yovo, and my milchik fork fell into my fleshik pot. No, it's not. Those aren't the questions. There are some heavy questions, and in the Holocaust, these are the types of questions that were asked. Can you get a baptism? The rabbi, you can't. You can't, because acknowledging that you baptized means that you're acknowledging Christianity. I think there was even one rabbi who said there was a card that had a C on it. The C stood for Christian. And if you're carrying this card, everybody knew you're a Christian, and you weren't a pasuk, you're not allowed to do it. I'd like to have to pasuk that child, right? And then fulfill it. That's a different question. If people did or didn't fulfill it, something else. How'd you like to pasuk in a shai where they're giving out certain certificates that if you have the certificate, it could save your life? If you have like a visa or a certificate of some sort, and there aren't enough for everybody, are you allowed to push to get one? How'd you like that? We're not talking about a Rebbe's tish, where you're pushing to get some kugel over here. I'll pass on the kugel, or I'm not going to push somebody to go kiss the Sefer Torah. What about to save your life? Interesting shilas, isn't it? Interesting questions that were asked. There was one question, Rabbi Meisels, who was a Rav in Chicago, by the way. He eventually, from the war, he was a Hasidic Rav, massive Talmud Chacham, and he was a Rav in Chicago. So he was in one of the camps, and a man came over to him and he said to him, my son is on the list to be executed tomorrow. I know that if I bribe the officer, the Nazi officer, I could switch places with my son. Am I allowed to switch places with my son? And there isn't a father in the world who wouldn't give up to switch places with his son. So Rabbi Meisel said to him, "I'm sorry, I don't have any of my sforim with me. I'd have to look it up. I don't know." He said, "Rebbe, I need to know. I said, I'm sorry, I don't have any sforim. I can't research it." And they went back and forth with him. Finally, he said it again. He said, "Rebbe, what should I do?" He said, "I don't know. I don't have my sforim." He said, "Thank you, Rebbe. I understand." That means halach is you're not allowed to. Father's not allowed to. So you're not allowed to give up your life for somebody else. You are allowed and you are required to try to save somebody else if there is a doubt about your life. So, for example, if somebody's drowning and you can possibly save them, then you're obligated to do it. If you don't know how to life-saving, to dive into the water if there's somebody who's drowning and you don't know, you've never been trained in life-saving, you're going to die. There's no way you're going to save somebody. Both people are going to die. So if you're a situation where for sure you're going to die, you're not allowed to do that. And you're certainly not allowed to switch place. You're not allowed to give up your life for somebody else. That you're not allowed to do. What you are allowed to do, and what the Gemara says, there were two men who gave up their life for the Jewish people. But there was a decree. What happened was there was a princess who was found killed, and they accused the Jewish people of murder. And the king said, unless I know who killed them, I'm going to kill the entire Jewish people. The people of a certain town, whatever it was. And two brothers stepped forward and took blame for the Jewish people. They said, we killed her. They weren't the ones who killed her. They were willing to die instead of everybody dying. That is permissible. That is permissible. And the Gemara says that they occupy the highest place in Olam Haba. So they gave up their life for what do you call it? Yeah, go ahead.
Just because it wasn't for sure they were going to die?
Because they were for sure going to die. They were for sure going to die anyway, but everyone was going to die. So they said, we'll take, no, we did it. So now they're willing to die alone. I don't know, you know, sometimes you wonder, well, you'd rather die with everybody than die alone. You know, that's just human nature. Well, if everybody died, I'd rather be part of the group. No, we'll go die and let everybody live. Why should be the one? You do it. You know, why, that sort of thing. And they stepped forward and allowed themselves to die. And so what do you call it? So that's considered very high level. So that's the basic idea. You're talking about something where it shows belief in Hashem is a very broad thing. And not worshiping idols is a very broad thing. That's what we told yesterday. You can't bow down. You can't, what do you call it? You can't walk into a church. They certainly can't do like that. I have a friend from India. A guy who's a very big Talmud Chacham. He lives across the street from me. So I once asked him, I know India is rampant with idol worship. They worship, I told you, I had a friend who was a mashgiach kashrus. What do you call it? He's a supervisor. There are a lot of factories in India, cheap labor also, like China. You know, it's cheap labor. They have these factories that make all these emulsifiers and this fires and that fires. So he was in India. So he came back. I couldn't wait to talk to him. I said, Moshe, did you see any idol worship there? He said to me, Rabbi, if it moves, they worship it. Right? They worship the snake and the cow and the dust and the ants, everything. They worship everything. So my friend who's from India, from Bombay, he told me that if you go to the local park, there are so many idols all over the place. We're not talking about pictures. We're talking about hardcore idols that they worship. He said, you got to be careful. You can't bend down to take a drink at a fountain because the chances are that there's you're bowing down to an idol. He says, very, very, you're not allowed to. You haven't been down to tie your shoe without checking to see where you are. So it's all over the place. Yeah, hardcore idol worship. Hardcore. So all these things are subcategories of what the Torah says, of not worshiping. I didn't do it on purpose, and I certainly aren't worshiping this thing. I was about 19 years old, and there was a shop in Chicago. We used to buy records back in the old vinyl, the regular records that you play. It was a record shop. So I went in there, and the guy's selling incense. Now, I know that incense is, it's this little stick, and you light it, and it smells, it smells good instead of using what do you call it? So I bought a stick of incense, and I brought it home, and I lit it. I put it in my room, and I lit it. It makes the room smell good. And they call it incense. And when my father walks into the room, he goes, what's that smell? I said, oh, it's just that incense. He goes, oh, no. Incense had, first of all, who knows where it was? It may have been used in idol worship service to begin with. But at the end of the day, just the word, we're allergic to that sort of thing. We're just severe allergies to anything. That's why I told you guys, if you ever go to the airport, and they have in these airports, they have these what are they called? Multi something or other worship rooms. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
What are they called?
Multicultural.
Multifaith prayer rooms. I told you, I would daven in a bathroom before I'd go in a room like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. Goodness knows what kind of idol worship is going on in that place. Are you kidding? Nobody's worshiping in the bathroom. Maybe in the bath. I'm telling you, if I had a gun to my head and somebody said to me, if I had a gun to my head, said there or there, I would go into the bathroom. I wouldn't go in there with a 10-foot. I wouldn't go in there with a 10-foot pole. See, in Tel Aviv over here, they have a shul they have a shul in the airport here. When you go into the airport, they have a shul. I would go one of these multi-worship forget it. When I got a daven in an airport, I go off into a corner. I usually just go off into a corner. I generally face the wall. Don't look for direction in an airport. Just look for where there aren't clothing allergied people walking past you. So I just face the wall and dive in a corner, without interfering. But I wouldn't go in that room at the time. I would if you force me. No way. Are you a kid? Who knows what's been going on in that room? That's the for sure idol worship. For sure, there's been avodah zarah in that room. The question,
What if you move into a house?
You don't know what the previous person did.
You're not responsible for that. Just take down any crosses and any what do you call it? Yeah, that were otherwise there's the Gemara says l'shavkas chay lechol beria. Then a person can't live. You don't have to suspect it, but over here you have to suspect it. Not only suspect it, you can be sure that it is. Especially who's going into these places. Not people who are secular. It's mostly religious people, and religious people are what do you call it? Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to get you too off.
No, go ahead.
Alright, so I always thought this would be the most interesting, Shiloh. So in the United States, I used to be really interested in criminology, specifically organized crime. And if you go to prison, and you're white, so there's Mexican gangs, black gangs, and then the white gangs are white supremacists. So you can only survive in jail as a white guy if you join the white supremacists. So if a Jewish guy came to you, hey, Rabbi, I'm sentenced to go to prison. I need a Shiloh to join the Nazis. Can I do it?
Well, that's not a religious thing. They're not the white supremacists.
They actively hate Jews. Like you would be undercover with them.
That's a different question about how far you. That's an interesting question to be a white supremacist, especially when your name is Herschel Goldstein. Hi, my name is Herschel Goldstein. I know I'm a white supremacist. All these these Klan guys look at you. This don't look like a white supremacist to me. That's an interesting shiloh. It's an interesting shiloh about how far you're allowed to go to save your life. These are very, very difficult, tricky to know. The best thing is don't do anything to end up going to jail. But on those rare occasions, where we end up tossed in the clink, what do you call it? I don't. Religiously, it's more tricky. It's trickier. There you can pretend, but you don't really, you're not really hating Jews. You're just saying you hate Jews. To say you're not Jewish is also it's a problem. These are all very big problems. These are very big problems. But anyway, that's the what do you call it? That's the mitzvah. It's a fascinating thing. Okay, then the Torah says skip down to the bottom line because this is also very, very what do you call it? This is really I don't believe anybody here is involved in idol worship. None of us are idol worshipers, but the following one does apply to us. 4 lines at the bottom. Lo sisa shema Hashem elokecha l'shav. Do not take Hashem's name in vain. Ki lo yinaki Hashem es asher yisa shmo l'shav. Hashem will not absolve somebody who takes His name in vain. And here the Gemara says that when Hashem gave this command, the world shook. This is the idea of not swearing falsely. And the idea of not taking Hashem's name in vain is because if you swear and you take Hashem's name in vain, what you're doing is you're trivializing Hashem's name. And we're not supposed to trivialize Hashem's name. We're supposed to regard Hashem's name with a certain amount of awe and respect. That's one of the reasons why sometimes I'm allowed to say this now because I'm teaching, and it needs to be said in order to educate. Sometimes people say, wow, it's a hot day. I swear to God, it's a hot day. So you just said God's name in vain. What are you swearing about the hot day for? You're trivializing it. To say God for no reason, even in any other language, is trivializing God. Is taking Hashem's name in vain. We don't say God. People say, "Oh, guy hit a home run against your team." People say, "Oh," they say, "Oh, gee," we don't do that. You don't do that because people say like, "I swear to God." They say they like that all the time. You're not allowed to do that. You're trivializing Hashem's name, and it's even "Oh my gosh." Where do you think "Oh my gosh" came from? Where do you think "gosh" is? Gosh is just somebody who didn't want to say God, so they put in an SH instead of D. Where did gosh come from? Oh my gosh. And everything, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, like a seminary girl. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Right? Oh my gosh, this pizza is so good, oh my gosh. Right? So you're not saying God's name, but it's a trivialization of Hashem's name. That's one of the reasons there's a concept called a bracha levatala. First of all, in Beis Din, we don't swear. In Beis Din, and a Jew in a secular court does not have to say, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, which I just lied, but I swear to tell the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. A Jew is allowed to decline swearing. A Jew is allowed to affirm.
Wow.
And say, in an American court, you could affirm. I won't swear, I will affirm. Right? And then if you lie, so then you can still be, what do you call it? You still be proud, you're liable for what's it called, perjury. You've perjured yourself under oath, even though you didn't swear. But that's why we don't make a bracha. We have to be careful with the bracha levatala. I mean, if I just made a bracha, I made a shakol. I took a drink, right? Oh, that was really good water. You know what? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam shakol d'viro. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? It's a bracha levatala. What's wrong with that? Why? What did I do wrong? I would think that's very respectful for Hashem. But every sip I make another bracha. The answer is, I don't know if you ever met anybody who thanks you, who overthanks you ad nauseum. Right? Oh, thank you. This is so good. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you for the. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. Sometimes you get people, they're just overthinking you. So like, calm down. So it trivializes the thank you. It trivializes Hashem's name. Once again, you made the bracha. You did what you had to do. To go say bracha Hashem, again, you're trivializing it, and therefore the Torah says, don't swear in vain. And that's why even a promise, anything that we say, we should always keep our word. But if you even swear without Hashem's name, it's a transgression. Oh, I swear that it's a hot day today. That's a transgression. And if you say Hashem's name, even in any other language, that's also a transgression. Okay. Shabbos, I'm not going to talk about, we all know.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
Like the word G-D, like, I don't, it's hard for me to register that has more impact than saying Hashem, because when I say, I don't know why, but when I say Hashem,
I can't help what's hard for somebody. I'm only telling you the facts. Whether it's hard for somebody, I can't see. That I can't do anything about other than take a pill. There's nothing I could do. Nothing I could do for emotional difficulty other than medication. But that's the fact. That's the fact. It's right. Okay. Now, after it says what do you call it? After Shabbos, it says what do you call it? To honor your parents, which we've also spoken about. If you just take a look in Pasuk page 970, you have to honor your father and your mother. And the one thing that I pointed out over here, it says Kasher tzivcha Hashem lokecha leman yarichu yamecha, that your days should be long, leman yitav loch al ha'adama asher Hashem lokecha nosei loch. Now, why would a person be resistant to honoring their parents? Why are you resistant? And by the way, my father, Olav Shalom, used to say, there's a halacha when your father walks in, you have to stand up for him, and you have to, you can't sit in your father's seat. All these things. My father said those are all wonderful, but that's nothing till they get old and you have to take care of them. Right? When they're old and you have to take care of them, then you see what real honoring of parents is. Right? I know the guy in my neighborhood right now. He walks with his father to shul every day. Must take him. It's a walk. It takes me. I've counted the steps, by the way. I think it's 198 steps to the shul. In one direction, it's 198 steps, and the other one, I think, is 217 steps. I counted to see which is the farther shul. So this guy walks. It takes me about a minute and a half to get to shul. Takes his father from down the block. It must take about 15 minutes to get to shul every day. So there's a walker. He's walking. This guy walks with him. That's not easy. Why would a person be resistant? What's the number one reason that a person is resistant to having to help their parents, especially when they're elderly? Because it takes up a tremendous amount of time. So what does the Torah promise you? The Torah says, L'man yarichon yamecha, you're going to live long. You're not going to lose out, don't worry. I'll give it to you on the other end. If you're worried about losing time, I'll make it up for you on the other end. So you are not going to lose out at all, number one. Number two, the idea of setting an example. The only way, the best way that kids learn to respect you is by seeing how you treat your parents. Okay, if people's parents aren't alive, that's something else. But if people's grandparents are alive, they see how the parents treat the grandparents. That's the best lesson. That's the best lesson for kids, as they see how the parents treat the grandparents, and the kids are going to treat them the same way. So the famous story Rabbi Weinbach once told us about a guy. He's got a father. Guy's impatient, and his father's living with them. And his hands are shaky, and he keeps dropping dishes and breaking dishes, and his son is losing patience. And finally says, Dad, if you keep breaking those dishes, I'm going to go down. I'm going to make you. I'm going to go to a wood shop, and I'm going to make a wooden dish for you. I'm going to make a wooden plate for you, and then you can drop it. You won't break anymore. He says, no, please don't make a wooden dish. I'll be embarrassed if I sit at the table. Finally, one day the father drops another dish. And the son says, that's it. The father says, please don't. And the son says, that's it, I've had it. And he goes down to the basement. He goes to the wood shop, and he starts carving out this wooden plate for his father. Then his 16-year-old son comes down. He starts carving out a wooden plate also. He says, no, you don't need to carve one out, Steve. One plate's enough for Grandpa. He says, I'm not carving this out for Grandpa. I'm carving this out for you when you're his age. Right? That's what, you like a snap, right? A snap. That's what kids learn. That's what kids learn. If they're going to treat you, that's where the kids learn the example. So the mitzvah of honoring your parents, l'man yarichon yamecha, l'man yitav loch, You'll live long, live in this world, and you'll earn a lot of reward in the world to come. Now, these are the ones I really want to get to today. Those are all basic. Then the Torah says, Lo sirtzach, don't murder. Now, most of us, hopefully, this doesn't apply halacha l'maisa, right? Hopefully, this is not something that you got to really work on, not murdering people. But the fact is that it does, because the Gemara says to embarrass somebody in public is like spilling his blood, and that's included in this mitzvah, lo sirtzach. Lo sirtzach means that if you embarrass somebody, you're also a murderer. If you embarrass somebody, it's also like you've murdered him. And therefore, to spill somebody's blood, the Gemara says why embarrassment is like killing him, because when a person gets embarrassed, we generally associate what happens when a guy gets embarrassed. What do you face turns red, right? But the Gemara says what happens is first the blood drains from the face, then it rushes back in. That's why he turns red. The draining, at the instant the person is embarrassed, first it's like he turns white and then red. The blood drains from his face. When a person realizes he's been embarrassed, then it rushes back in. The draining of the blood, at the instant it drains, is as if you spilled his blood. So that's considered as if you've killed him. So lo sirtzach, now, it doesn't say lo saharog. It doesn't say don't kill. It says don't murder. What's the difference? What's the difference between killing and murdering?
One can be an accident.
One can be an accident. What else? A very big difference between killing and murdering. Killing, sometimes people need to die. Beis Din is allowed to execute people. They're not called murderers. And if you see somebody, Reuven is chasing Shimon to kill him, and you have to defend Shimon or to defend your own life, somebody's trying to kill you, and you have to you kill the guy instead of so then you have to you have to kill him. That's not called murdering. And murdering is when unjust. Yes, please.
Murder requires malice and forethought or reckless disregard for human life.
Is that the definition?
Yes, sir.
Okay, there we go. I'll be careful not to be malice and without forethought. Well, very good. I like that. How's the quote go? Say it again.
Murder requires malice and forethought or reckless disregard for human life.
Reckless disregard for human life. I like that. Very good. Very good. That's exactly what it is. So lo sirtzach is, and then by the way, it could also be referring to somebody who's driving recklessly nowadays. Person gets into a car. People are worried about people smoking cigarettes. And they're worried about, people worry, smoking is hazardous to your health. And I'm a lot more worried about people but at least when you take a cigarette, it's not a weapon. How many people have been killed by somebody poking them with a cigarette? And you get into a car, not only you're endangering your own life, you're endangering the life of other people, and many times it's into more than one person. That's a real weapon. And if a person's driving recklessly and he kills somebody, that's a serious business. And you can't say, well, it was an accident. Okay, so one thing if your car got blown off the street, there's a tornado blew your car and it blew into somebody. Okay, there's nothing you can do about it. But if a person's driving and they're a drunk driver, what can you do with a drunk driver? What do you do with somebody who's speeding, somebody who's going too fast? And there are plenty of cases like that. So the Torah says, you're not allowed to kill. Velosinov Vosinov specifically refers to immorality with a married woman, what we call adultery, Torah adultery. But included in this is all other areas of immorality. Velosignov, over here in the Ten Commandments, Losignov refers to kidnapping. There's a different command, this is often misunderstood. There's a different command where the Torah says, Losignovu, do not steal. This is specifically kidnapping, where you take somebody into your possession and you force them to do work. Again, I hope this is not something that is halacha l'maisa. And then it says, Losane berecha eid shav, do not testify falsely. Now, here is the kicker of the entire thing. Velosachbod eshes reecha, do not desire your friend's wife. And in many cases, the only reason you desire her is because she's someone else's wife. That means often it could be a girl that you know or you knew, and you would never have wanted to marry her. And then the day she gets married, she suddenly looks a whole lot better. And the reason is because now she's off limits. And it's human nature, psychologically. So it says, don't desire your friend's wife. Velosi sava beis riecha, don't desire his house. Sodehu, his field. Ve'avdo, his slave. Ve'amoso, shoro v'chaboro, his ox and his donkey. V'chol asher l'reiecha, and anything that he has. Now, the Torah says not to desire his wife and not to desire his donkey. I mean, my goodness, what's going on over here? Don't desire. Hopefully there's a different aspect of desire. The answer is that the Torah is telling you that many times the only reason we desire something is because it belongs to somebody else. That's the truth. It belongs to somebody else. It's off limits. But what's interesting here is if you look at the pasuk now, there's insight into human nature, because it says individualized. Don't desire the wife of Re'echa, your friend. V'lo tis'ave beis Re'echa. Don't desire his house. Sadehu, his field. Ve'avdo, v'amoso, v'shoro, v'chamro. Then it ends with v'chol asher l'Re'echa, anything that belongs to him. So the commentary is asking, so you could have abridged the entire thing. Just say, don't desire everything that belongs to the other guy. Right? Why do you have to go listen? I know what people own. I know people are married. I know people have oxen. I know people have slaves. Why do you have to go and specify every single thing here? Why do you go? Just get straight to the point. Don't desire what other people have. So I saw a phenomenal explanation here. One of the Farshim says, it's human nature that we look at what another guy said. What's an Aston Villa? There's a car called an
Aston Martin?
Aston Martin.
That's a nice car.
Aston Villa is a football team in England.
In England, correct. I get it. What's it called an Aston Martin?
Yeah.
An Aston Martin is high level.
Yeah. It's like the British Ferrari or Lamborghini.
Okay. So it's a fancy car.
Yeah.
Okay. So why do I know about that? Because somehow I know about that. But what do you call it? Now, up until now, I knew about Lamborghinis. I never owned one. But what do you call it? But if you want to get me one, that's fine. An Aston, what's it called? Aston Martin?
Aston Martin, yeah.
Okay. For your friend has an Aston Martin, and you desire his Aston Martin. Right? I like his Aston Martin. You have wow. So first of all, let's understand what desire means. The prohibition is not to desire it. So obviously, if you have something nice, like, boy, I would like something like that. That's human nature. The transgression is if I pressure you into giving it to me or selling it to me. Then I've transgressed. You're not supposed to desire it, but that's not the actual transgression. The actual transgression is to pressure you into actively selling it to me. Now, why does the Torah, let's say this guy's got a nice house. Well, I'd also like a nice house. This guy's got a nice slave. I'd also like a nice slave, right? The guy had a nice wife. I'd also like a nice wife. That's human nature. So then why does the Torah say at the end, V'chol, anything he has? The answer is because to desire one thing in somebody else is unreasonable. This guy's got an Aston Martin, right? Boy, I wish I had that. Yeah, do you wish he had the rest of his life? Do you know that he's got a kid, one of his kids is a drug addict? Do you want that also for your kids? No. Okay, you can't pick one thing out, isolate one thing of his life. That's unfair. Why are you isolating one thing? That's why it says, V'chol asher l'recha. Look at the whole picture. You're looking at individual things. I don't want individual things. What about the entire picture? So I know a guy who had an Aston Martin. He also ended up in a federal penitentiary for 5 years. Yeah, you want the Aston Martin and you want the whole thing? You want the whole thing, or you want none of it? Like Michael Jordan once said, people feel, boy, I wonder what it would be like to be Michael Jordan for a day. And Michael Jordan said, it's not Michael Jordan for a day. It's Michael Jordan all the time, that you can't walk the streets because people are hounded and this, that, and the other. All right, now I don't have any sympathy for Michael Jordan. If I was a billionaire and couldn't walk the streets, I'll deal with it. I'll get a shaded car and figure out how to get to Yeshiva. Don't worry about it. I don't feel. But what he's saying there is truth to what he's saying. Some athletes are great philosophers, right? They're great philosophers, like Shaquille O'Neal, who said the trouble with the world is it's too materialistic. And then the next day signed a contract for $108 million when he jumped, what do you call it? So he may have been a contradictory philosopher, but it was said the trouble with the world is too materialistic, because he's a big Baal Musar. So what do you call it? So Michael Jordan said that, but it's true. You're looking at one individual part of a person's life. You want everything? You know, there's a source that says your nashama, before it came down to this world, was shown what it's going to go through. All the good, all the aggravation, all the problem, everything. Midterms, everything, right? The neshama was shown everything. And you chose that. You were shown other things. You chose that, and you didn't want somebody else's troubles. You didn't want somebody else's issues. So a person looks, you're jealous of somebody else. Is that reasonable? You want to go through everything you went through? That's why it says, look at the whole picture. If you look at the whole picture, then you won't have a problem with any of the other things. And frankly, of all human emotions, I think that that's the most difficult one. The physical pursuits is one thing. Physical pursuits are relatively easy to overcome. But when it comes to the pursuit of honor, the intangibles are much more of a drive. People drive themselves crazy for honor, and then they get there and they see that there was nothing there. There was absolutely nothing there. That's why a lot of celebrities end up committing suicide, because they wanted to be celebrities because they wanted the attention and they want to be a celebrity until they become a celebrity, and they're not very happy about being a celebrity, and they end up committing suicide. A lot of what do you call Hollywood people committed suicide. Why do you commit suicide? That was what you wanted. Well, it was so good because it's an illusion. Harder than that is jealousy. Is the envy, to be envious of somebody else. The worst form of envy is, I don't care if I don't have it, I just don't want him to have it. That's already nasty, right? I don't care if I have it, I just don't want him to have it. That's already another, a lower level. But the fact that I'm envious of somebody else, I wish I had what you had, that's human nature. That is very hard to overcome that. Very hard to overcome that. The only way to overcome that is that a person understands that at Kodesh Baruch Hu, somebody once said, one of the Bali Musar said that being jealous of somebody means you're angry at Hashem. That's what jealousy is. Because you realize that Hashem deals the cards. So what are you address? I mean, I'm unhappy with the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu has dealt the cards. That's what jealousy is. Very hard to overcome. All right, we'll continue tomorrow.